What's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to another episode of SMITE Meta Casual News. In today's episode, we'll be deep diving into the patch. We'll talk about Yiannis, we'll talk about new skins, we'll talk about warriors. What warriors? We'll talk about this new fangled 4v4 mode in Siege, all that and more. Once again, my name is FG3000, you're you, and here comes the news. First up in news, Mountain Man Odin has finally received his remodel, and boy, it was worth the wait. The pajama onesie is gone, and now we have an amazing, very beefy texture model on Odin now. It looks really good. Also, the skill effects are very tastefully done. There's like snow kind of always dripping off all of his abilities. It's really awesome. Not to mention, he also got an updated voice pack, which seems to be a trend with high res now. A lot of these skins are getting custom voice packs, which is very awesome, but once again, it kind of shows how much we need to have a toggle to select which voice you want for the god that you're going to select. So if you want to use Odin and you want to use his Mountain Man voice, you should be able to. And also, if you want to use Mountain Man Odin, you should be able to use his default Odin voice. I'm pretty sure, of course, I have no inside information, but I know Hi-Res has heard this complaint. It's coming probably sooner than later if you want my opinion on that. And then real quick, of course, we have the TSM Apollo, which we've covered in excruciating detail in the last episode, so we won't really go into detail on this one. Just know that this skin is actually pretty well done. So regardless of what you know about TSM or what you know about esports, Apollo in a varsity Letterman jacket is pretty awesome. So take a look at the skin. It's available for 600 gems. Next topics. And next up, let's talk about good old Yiannis. Now, this is probably the first time in SMITE history that the new god wasn't the biggest news out of the patch. With the warrior changes in the 4v4 siege mode, Yiannis kind of fell under the radar just a little bit, but we're going to talk about him today anyway. Now, as far as this kit goes, I'm showing you some arena footage. Don't play him in arena. His ultimate is absolutely useless. I learned out the hard way. He just doesn't really have any synergy. Even if someone stuns and sets up for you, it's kind of hard to hit that ultimate, and the portals don't really mean too much unless you're fighting over the side camps, and even then, barely. Now, back to the god. Now, he kind of has the same dilemma that Athena had when she first came out. And what I mean by that is you can use your one to help your teammates escape, right? You can throw a portal on a wall, your teammate can run through it, and they can escape a gank. A lot of people don't really know how to interact with it, exactly how Athena was when she first came out in the game, where an Athena would ult on somebody and they didn't know what to do. They're like, why am I flashing? What's going on here? And a lot of people just didn't know what to do. So that's going to be something that's going to get better over time. As far as his 2 is concerned, it is one of the rare skill shots in Smite that I do not have on instant cast, just because I felt like it's kind of hard to envision where that ability is going to go in every situation at a split moment's notice. Now, of course, practice is going to improve that, but I found out that I had better luck connecting with his 2 by just keeping it on the normal casting mode. Now, as far as his 3 is concerned, it's very lackluster feeling. Now, on paper, it's a great move. I mean, it passively increases your movement speed. If your enemies run through it, it increases your magical scaling damage versus them. It's a pretty cool ability on paper. It feels like nothing. Like when you cast it and you put it on someone, it feels like nothing. Even if you run through it yourself trying to get a little extra movement speed out of the base, you don't really feel like you're moving that much faster. So that move itself, like I said, great on paper, doesn't feel very good. And his ultimate. My. 1.5 seconds to wind that ultimate up. It is very hard to hit. Even when someone sets up for you, it is very hard to hit. And I think they did that to kind of, the longer it travels, the more damage it does. So they did that to kind of balance it out a little bit, but I think it went a little too far. I think it's better off just killing the damage. If it's going to take that long, the only thing you're going to use it for is for utility purposes and really lucky snipes to post on YouTube. So I don't really agree with his ultimate just yet. I'm pretty sure we're going to see a couple of different changes with him. As he stands right now, I don't think you're going to see him a lot in tournament play, just because his ultimate is so... it's just so situational, right? So I think when it comes to tournaments, people go for things that are tried and true, things that they can count on. That's why you don't see people like Vulcan, right? Because you can't rely on his ultimate. You just don't know if it's going to hit. The same thing with Yiannis. You can't rely on him. You don't know how useful those portals are going to be. You don't know if you'll ever hit your ultimate. Things like that are going to keep him behind. He's still a very, very fun god. Very awesome mechanics. I love the fact that we even have this in Smite. So, all in all, Yiannis, you get my stamp of approval. Welcome to Smite. Alright, now let's talk about these warriors. Now, Hi-Rez has been very, very particular in not calling this a warrior nerf patch. You know, they wanted to call it a shift or a rebalancing or reimagining of the warrior class. Take that as you will. Now, keep in mind, this is just SMITE Meta Casual news, so we're not going to go into every single detail of all the warriors that have been changed, except for Nemesis, who is now an assassin. She escaped, or she might have been nerfed, become an assassin. Whatever your feedback on that is, leave it in the comment section below. Now, let's talk about warriors. So, for the most part, and there are exceptions, most of the warriors in the game have received lower attack speeds, lower damage. They've lost passive protections, passive power. That's in the case of Odin. Sun Wukong has been changed pretty hardcore. His 1 does less damage. His Master's Will no longer does knockup, which was probably one of the best moves in the game, right? An AoE knockup interrupt, which is really, really easy to land. That no longer has that. It's only at 30% slow for 2 seconds. Tyr no longer does knockup in his fearless stance. His healing has been scaled down dramatically. Lots and lots of changes on the warriors. And then you have Hercules, who he still receives some nerfs as far as his attack speeds go. But then he got Driving Strike buffed. If you're not familiar with Driving Strike, if you've never used the ability, it had this weird delay on it. Like, you would press the button, it'd be a little pause. Hercules would kind of think about if he really wanted to Driving Strike or not, and then he would Driving Strike, but your enemy would be already gone. Now, Driving Strike, you press that button, you're Driving Striking something. Whether it's minions, whether it's air, or whether it's a god, you're going to Drive Strike something the instant you press that button. So that was actually a very, very positive change on Hercules. I've already played him post-patch. I like him a lot more. Most people in the community are thinking that Hercules is the strongest warrior in the game. I can't confirm nor deny that. I still think Sun Wukong is still going to be a very, very good god. I also think that Tyr is still very, very good. Sure, he's lost some of that sustain. He's lost some of that, yo, I'm Tyr, I'll kill everything. But his kit, Blink Fearless, is one of the best, most team fight changing abilities in the game. He still has that, so I don't think Tyr is going to fall off as much as people think he is. Odin, maybe, because it's so easy to avoid his ring with just counterpicking that, but, you know, that's a different conversation for a different day. So, why did Hi-Rez do this? Now, this is actually a pretty monumentous moment in Smite, because, truth be told, this is a massive nerf on warriors. Massive. Huge. And the consensus on Reddit and the Smite forums is that most people knew this day was coming, and they're okay with a majority of the changes. They don't like all of them, but they're pretty much okay with a lot of the changes, and that is incredible to me, because typically when you do a balanced nerf pass this large, there is a huge backlash. Like, people lose their mind. Now, of course, like I said, there are exceptions. There are some people that are not happy about these changes whatsoever. But for the most part, people were kind of okay with this. They kind of knew that warriors kind of own the conquest meta, or even other modes. You know, like I said, I don't really play a lot of warriors outside of conquest, but for the most part, they own the game. If you can get a warrior to come out of the solo lane, or come out of the jungle, or come out of the support role, decently geared, decently fed, he changed the dynamic of the entire game more than almost any class that you can possibly have. More than hunters, more than mages, and more than assassins. Like, a warrior would take over in that mid to late game. So I'm glad Hi-Rez realized that, you know what, we don't need to have a single class be this powerful. And I'm also really, really glad that the community realized, you know what, that isn't a very good idea. You know, maybe we don't need one class to be that end-all be-all, jack of all trades. I can tank, I can kill you, I can set up team fights. I am the man, I am warrior. Good on you, Hi-Rez, for seeing that needed to be changed, and good on the community for not attacking high res just because they didn't want to be nerfed, right? They saw the long-term effects of this. They saw that, you know what, at the end of the day, we want to have this game to be as balanced as possible. This is what needs to be done. Do it high res. Let's get it over with. Rip the band-aid off, and let's get back to smiting. Nice job, community in high res. Next topic. And one last tease before we get into the final topic today. Hi-Res2 mentioned that he has looked at the brand new God remodel and it's looking pretty awesome thus far. Hashtag keep moving forward. Now, Hi-Res2 is notorious for dropping little breadcrumbs, little teases and hints in his tweet about what gods are going to be looked at or changed or remodeled. In this tweet, I don't think there's anything. I think this is a pretty straightforward tweet. The hashtag keep moving forward probably only talks about high-res as a company moving forward. I don't think that indicates any god in the game. So that's just my personal opinion. If I had to guess which god would be next, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be Ao Kuang. It's a god that they have mentioned that they would be remodeling very soon, but they did not give an indication on it, so that would be my guess. He also has an old crusty character card. That doesn't really mean too much of anything, but he is one of the guys that still has his default character card that is, you know, old. Him and Hercules. There might be some more that I can't think of off the top of my head, but my guess is Ao Kuang. Of course, we won't know. I doubt it's going to be next patch, but it's coming very, very soon. Can't wait to see it. Next topic. And for our last topic, let's talk about this brand new Siege mode change. Now, prior to this patch, Siege mode was 5 versus 5. That has now been changed, temporarily or permanently, we don't really know just yet, to 4 versus 4. There are so many opinions in so many different places on Twitter, Reddit, Smite forums, I mean, all over the place. I just could not get a real read on what the majority thought on this topic. So let's just lay it out on the line. Let's just tell you what both sides think. So 4 versus 4 advocates think this. They think that the map is too small for 5 people. They think that the map kind of fosters a chaotic feel. A lot of surprises, a lot of ganks. And this is going to sound like a bad word, but it's not meant to be. That the mode was very unpredictable, which means since it was so unpredictable, it was hard to plan for. And if it's hard to plan for, it's hard to develop strategies for. So 4 versus 4 advocates think, hey, if you take out some of that chaoticness, you can add a level of strategy to the mode, which the more you're invested in the mode, the more strategy it takes, the more rewarding it is to win, the more rewarding it is to play, thus the more fun. That is the nutshell version of the 4 versus 4 advocates. Now, of course, there's some more details, but like I said, this is SMITE Meta Casual news. We can't go into everything. So, what do the 5 versus 5 people think? Well, funny enough, they think the exact opposite of the 4 versus 4 people. They like 5 versus 5 because it's so chaotic, because it's so unpredictable, because that you can lose a tower in a few seconds and not even have a chance to react to it. Where the 4 versus 4 advocates say, that doesn't make any sense. I should be able to react and counter my opponents. 5 versus 5 say, you know what? Chaos, madness, it's fun. You never know what you're going to get. Who's right and who's wrong? Well, it's really, really hard to say because you have to think about it in a different aspect. Conquest. People that play Conquest feel the same way. It's a slower mode. Arguably, it's kind of boring sometimes when you're just jungling, just doing some PvE. It's kind of boring sometimes, but because there's so many aspects to it, there's so many layers of strategy, there's so much planning that you can do, you can counter basically everything in Conquest. So when you win, it's more rewarding, thus it's more fun. Where on the other side of that coin, people that play Arena and Assault think, you know what? Arena is non-stop team fights for the most part. There is a strategy, but for the most part, it's non-stop team fights. And people love that. In Assault, people love the fact that it's random. Like, you never know what you're going to get. It's on one lane. All the team fights are just really, really, really just out of this. Like, you don't even know what's going to happen when you're in the middle of the lane of Assault. And people like it for that reason. Now we have Siege. Which side does Siege lead on? Should it lean on the side of being more Arena and Assaultish? Or should it lean on more the Conquest side? You know what? The people in the community can't answer that question. We have to go to Hi-Res to ask them. So we have to know, Hi-Res, do you want this mode to be more slow pace? more methodical, more strategic based, or do you want it to be more chaotic, more unpredictable? What do you envision this mode to be? And until Hi-Res tells us what their vision for this mode is, we can't tell them that 5 versus 5 or 4 versus 4 is better. I mean, we just can't, because we don't know what they're trying to accomplish with this mode. So my advice to you: play the 4 versus 4. We've already played the 5 versus 5 the entire time it's been out. Play 4 versus 4, give it a chance, give your honest feedback. What I really don't want to happen is that people get so bent on their opinion that they have a built-in bias when they go into this, right? So if you like 4 versus 4, well, you can't try for 5 versus 5 anymore, but if you liked 5 versus 5, go into 4 versus 4 with an open mind, really take a look at it. Now, if you're wrong, and you're like, you know what, 4 versus 4 is actually better, just tell the world. Man up or woman up and just tell people, okay, I tried it out, it is better. And if it's not, do the same thing. Hey, I tried it, it's not better. Because the last thing we need is people that are just hell-bent on their opinion, that even if the mode is better, they won't admit that it's better. Or even if it's worse, they won't admit that it's worse, just because of a pride thing. That is the last thing we need. We need really honest, unbiased opinions on what is going to make Smite and Siege mode a better mode to play, more fun, and more popular. And that's all I have to say about that. And that's going to wrap it up for today's episode of SMITE Meta Casual News. As always, I thank you so much for sitting through 16 minutes of my rambling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's always a SMITE Meta Casual News just around the corner. And with that being said, my name is FG3000, you have been you, and that, my friends, was the news.